if you really want to unsettle people, not just tell them to be unsettled, you're best off hiding what it is that you're doing to create that atmosphere.
Thanks, Lenny, for such a fantastically atmospheric and
Thank you.
eerie film. Really, really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of gothic,
Great.
sort of eerie movies. And I just wanted to start by asking, there are many different ways in which a director can unsettle and provoke an audience, but surely one of the most provocative and effective is that sense of the uncanny
Yes.
and the ambiguous. And I wondered, how much of a challenge is that for you as a filmmaker to render it in a film such as this?
The challenge, I think, is to sort of task yourself with doing it with the least possible obvious flourish. You know, how little can you? What's the sort of most delicate way in which you can create that atmosphere? So I think as soon as you go full on, Tudor, Gothic horror mansion. Okay, everybody just knows what you're doing, and I think that knowing, there is a pleasure to that as well, like watching the beats be, watching it be executed.
Yeah.
And, it's like action. If you go and see Liam Neeson, killing loads of people out of revenge, the pleasure is just seeing how well they do it. But I think if you really want to unsettle people, not just tell them to be unsettled, you're best off hiding what it is that you're doing to create that atmosphere. So with The Little Stranger, it was about building that and turning creating that sort of pressure, that internal pressure on Faraday, slowly, carefully, inexorably, and having the audience kind of feel that without recognizing that they're, don't have them, their muscles are clenching, but you don't quite realize that it's happening
Kind of like a
until the end.
subconscious thing, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
The first time I saw Hundreds Hall was July 1919. Nothing could have prepared me for the spell it cast. When I saw the house again 30 years later, I could hardly comprehend the change in the place.
This might just be my reading of it, but when I was watching the film, I was sort of drawing comparisons with your previous film, Room, in as much as this film and that film to an extent deal with people in this kind of claustrophobia, like trying to deal with circumstances that are building in on them. I wonder, did you sort of feel the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are continuities with some of the other films in other ways as well. Donald's character in Frank is also desperate to be part of something that he'll never be allowed to be a part of, and is ultimately destructive of. But the idea that you are, I think the challenges were like almost opposite. So that Room is an obviously oppressive space, but what you're trying to do is to show how that can be a kind of complete world for a child. So you want to open it out for the audience and have them, by the time you're in the second half of the film, you want the audience, like Jake Tremblay's character, to sort of weirdly want to go back.
Yeah.
And in this case, you're taking a really, really wide open, airy, huge, big house and trying to make it feel claustrophobic, small, oppressive.
Why don't you tell me what's going on?
You wouldn't believe me.
Mother, this is Dr. Faraday.
How did you find the patient?
A little under the weather.
Were there any cinematic inspirations that you drew on when putting the film together, like classical Gothic, like ghostly, chillers?
Actually, we looked at a lot of photographs from myself and Ulla Birkeland, who's the DOP. We looked at books of images from old houses. Particularly, there's one book about Irish old houses, which is just really interesting to me, about how families ended up living in, one room with like a gas cooker, and the whole house is sort of falling down around them. Yeah. And we looked at some other like materials of doctors from the 40s, John Berger book, which is really great. I sort of deliberately didn't watch a lot of ghost stories or horrors because I wanted us to have to discover I tell you what I wanted. I wanted to stick as closely as I could to what was really happening to Faraday and try to allow that to infect the film atmospherically. Rather than going, okay, the thing to do with the ghost story is, using huge wide-angle lenses, creating odd angles. That would be sort of too mechanical a solution to the problem, I think.
Suddenly feel nervous.
A long time ago. Who's this child here?
What are you doing here?
One of the most chilling things about the Sarah Waters book, on which the film is based, is the way that Faraday is slowly revealed as this incredibly sort of chilling, unreliable narrator. And I wondered how important was Domhnall Gleeson's casting to that in terms of that unravelling.
Yes, very. And it's always the challenge is how do you transpose what's happening with when you're listening to the voice of a character, because you're imprisoned in his voice in the novel. You can introduce these tensions, what's happening that he describes versus how he describes it. At any point, you can pull those two things apart. Not having his, we do a little bit of voiceover, but very, very little. So then it's about literal sort of to what extent we're encouraging an audience to be with him emotionally versus make that more difficult. It's a different kind of in and out movement that you're making. But what Domhnall brings is just this great subtlety as a performer. And he's also very, he is a naturally sympathetic person, Domhnall. And I think something of that kindness persists in Faraday as played by him. Just a hint of it, a ghost of it. And that's important. Otherwise he'd just be, I didn't want him to just become, oh my God. There's the oh my God, he's really dead version. Or there's the oh my God, that person we thought was the detective is really the murderer version. And it can't be as definite as that with this film. Otherwise you lose the subtlety of what Sarah's trying to do.
Susan died before I was born.
There's something evil in this house.
That's nonsense.
The book, which I read earlier this year, is a lot of different things. It's not just a paranormal thriller, it's also about Britain after World War II, and it's about the class structure. And I wondered, how closely did you work with Lucinda Coxon and Sarah in terms of staying true to that?
So Sarah's a sort of dream in the sense that she just goes, here you go, I'm the novelist, you guys are the filmmakers, good luck. And we shared drafts with her because we just wanted to keep her part of the team and just out of respect for her, really. And but Lucinda I worked with incredibly closely, and we talked so much about, because the mechanics of the story are really what is it that what has been injected into Faraday that has made him this. And it's a kind of distilled toxic version of the British class system. That's what has made him.
Yeah.
So we really had to think hard about that. And I think what we've done is very true thematically to the novel, because it's such a brilliantly constructed book, odd in many ways. And I think the film is too. But thematically, it's very satisfying. When you start to hold it up and look at it, you go, God, that's a brilliantly... to go from the social and the sort of issues of class via a kind of Freudian model into a contemporary Jekyll and Hyde story where Jekyll doesn't know that Hyde exists.
Yeah.
It's just such a brilliant move that she made.
Betty, what are you doing here?
You rang for me, miss.
I did not.
It was this bell that rung.
Rang itself, did it? What is all the noise?
One of the things that I loved about the film was the way that it made more of the flashback, the sequences to him as a young child, which were very eerie, and presumably that was fundamental.
It was fundamental because the thing is, the way the story works, like, again, Sarah can, in the novelist can tell you about the significance of something in any number of ways. In the film, were we just to have glanced off the flashback, I mean, just in terms of page count, say, in the novel, if we'd said, okay, proportionally, we're just going to have the same sort of number of flashbacks and way that they work, I think it would never have held its significance. So we repeat that moment a few ways and a few times in order to build up the layers of significance for Faraday. It took us a while to discover that in the adaptation, also in the cut. We had a few different configurations of that before we felt we got the right one.
Your mind is playing tricks. Susan is a memory. It can all be explained.
How innocent you are.
There's a lovely, it's almost tactile sense of like when he touches the banister and when he touches the acorn as well. And did that come out in the edit, or was that always evident?
We were always interested in what he was touching, but I think that there's a moment in the script already where we talked about his hand grazing along the railing as he walked up, because we wanted. That's the first time in the film where he goes upstairs.
Yeah.
And the idea of upstairs as the ultimate sort of heart of the house and the landing, it plays a lot, you know, so that was a big moment.
His delusion seemed almost contagious. Someone's playing games.
It is generally women at the root of this stuff.
There's something in this house that hates us. You do not belong here. You